Hi, this is Mike from Minimal 3DP, and today I'm starting work on setting up, putting together a new printer. I recently purchased TRONXY X5SA printer. Currently, it's listed for $429 on Amazon. I was able to get it $189 using 3D printing deals, which I have a video for that. I'll link to the top so you can take advantage of that site. But I got this printer. In reviewing it, looking at the reviews, it's very much a printer that's in desperate need of a bunch of upgrades. It's hard to put together, hard to use, but again, it's good for somebody with experience. It's also a Core XY, which I don't have, and I'd love to get a Voron, but I just don't have the money. But at 189, I can afford that, and then I can print a bunch of upgrades. And then also, in looking around, there's this project called VZBot, which is a bunch of upgrades for the TRONXY printer that really make it into something that's much more like a Voron. And again, I'm not claiming it's a Voron, but it could put me well on my way towards having something really, really awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. One of the first things I did was I've already reviewed the manual, and a lot of the reviews I've read say how crappy it is, but at least so far, it seems like there's a lot of stuff here. And one of the complaints I saw was that there's no parts guides. Now, probably the bags aren't labeled, but at least it does look like I have some cards here where I can compare sizes to. I have various instructions for leveling, for using the bed, and then a manual that, again, I'm not sure how good it is, but let's just go ahead and start going through this together. So I've gone ahead and opened up my box, and I'm going to move some things around. And I'm just going to try following along with these instructions to put this machine together, and hopefully you can follow along with me. If you have any questions, just you can post them below in the comments. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm paging through the instruction manual real quick. Now, so we do have, so it looks like the first thing we're going to start with is messing with the frame. So I'm going to go ahead, start pulling stuff out of the boxes, and then get the frame set up on the frame pieces set up on my workbench. And I'll just be switching back and forth. So I'm going to try to get good angles here, but just bear with me. So I've gone ahead and laid out all the frame pieces, and I guess I'm going to have to sort of figure out which one's which now. They are not labeled. I'll have to go through and figure out which one's which. I'm using 2040s. Looks like the piece has gone down I guess the Z-axis. Looks like those are 2040s. So I did see 2040s here. And said I'm hoping the camera around, see if I can get a good angle here. I think this is a decent angle. So here's my four. So here's my four 2040s. So here, these are going to be like this, I believe. We'll be standing up. Again, I probably don't need to start with these standing because they're just going to fall over, but we'll leave them there for a minute. And let's go over and look, figure out what the next two pieces we need are. Okay, looking at the directions on this side here, I'm going to need a 2020 460 millimeters. There should be two pieces on one for each side. So let me go over and look at my pile of materials and see if I can find that. So now I should start lining these up. Of course, it looks like I have, this is just sucks how I'm having to do this. What looks like I have four Let me go look through my directions again and just count up pieces. Again, nothing labeled sucks. It's hard to see here, but it looks like I have one 484 millimeter piece, four 530 millimeters, and four 460s. So what I'm going to do is have these tiny little labels. So let me go ahead and and I'll stay on camera to do this. I'm going to go ahead and make some labels here so I can go ahead and figure out what's what. Like I said, that the fact that these aren't labeled just means I have to make sure that, which again is sort of questionable. Okay, so I made my labels. So let's go over here to my tripod and let's label these pieces. Start labeling. So that aside, let's label my four 460s, four 530s. These aren't the best labels in the world, but at least while I have them sitting there, I can see what everything is. So what I'll need to start with is I need 530s on the x-axis. So we'll start laying these out like this. And then 460s, which will be over here. And of course, oh, now, and this is saying I need an M5 25 screw. So let's dig through my box and see what I can find. So here is how the screws came packaged. So it's one big package with all the screws on it. So, and then it does look like I have a spare parts here. This is going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. So let's start with, I think I have a sheet back here. Okay. Make sure this, okay. So let's see, doesn't help. I have multiple, there we go. So I need, according to the directions, RM5 25 screws. So that's this one here. So I'm going to use my magnetic cups here with these screws, because once I open these up, they're going to go everywhere. I have all the screws dumped in my bowl. Now what I'm going to do is pull out a second bowl, which is just going to be for the screws I need for this step. So it looks like I need 5 of these RM5 25s for the corners, and I'm doing the bottom first. So what I'm going to do is I need 8 total, if I'm reading this right. I'm just going to pull all those out. Like I said, I'll keep this this bowl just be for the parts I need at this step. Okay, so I have 8 screws in here, and then I'm looking at the instructions right here, and it looks like I'm getting 2 of these in each corner. Get my driver all set up. Now I'm going to switch over to my tripod and I'll start the installation. Okay, now the big thing it's telling me here is not to over tighten. So what I'm going to do is side, set this and this down. Go ahead and screw in. did not over tighten. Both sides are the same. If I'm interpreting this right, this looks correct. As I mentioned, we want to be careful not to over tighten anything. I've already printed parts to put in the corners here to tighten up this frame. One of the things I read about this was the frame, particularly if you start cranking up the speed, tends to wobble. Can't have that, because ideally I'm going to convert it over to clipper. And if I can tighten up the frame some, probably change the hot end, I'm really going to crank up the speed and tighten up some of these just a little bit more. Let's throw away all my labels here. Okay. Now, switch back over to my directions. Looks like the next step here, I'm actually going to need to put on the feet. And it wants me to measure 20 millimeters in from the side when I'm putting these on. So there's 4 feet. Let me find those. So again, another big bag of bolts, which means just trying to figure out what's what. Now, here are the 4 feet. This is interesting. You notice there's no screws in there. And I'm going to here the instruct. So let's again, a problem with the instructions. So we have it's telling me 12 of these screws, okay, which doesn't seem right, because I should have 16 if there's 2 on each corner and there's top and bottom. So that's one thing. But up here it's listing all the parts needed. There's the pads for the bottom. But if you notice down here, it's mentioning an M4 bolt. So already on the parts needed to assemble the frame, on this page alone, it's showing all the parts needed, but then doesn't actually show all the parts needed because it's mentioned another part down here that's not listed at the top. So that's pretty crappy. So let me look through all my guides here and see if I can figure out what the heck screw I need to be looking for. I feel like this is going to be a continuing theme here, but I just noticed on this set of directions, the M4 boat nut, here's the picture of it. There's nothing there. Same with this M3 nut. Now, I know it, but I think it says boat nuts. I think it's talking about these T-nuts. I'll be honest, I'm not particularly sure, and I'm going to have to figure that out. But I mean, that's sort of crappy. So let me again go back through here and see if I can figure out what's what. Yeah, I'm just going to have to take a guess as to what screw I'm going to use. I think this is an M412 right here. So it appears to fit in the T-nut, and it looks like I'd have enough slack to put this on. So we're going to go with this. Luckily, I have more screws, or I guess I could take things apart. I'm going to go ahead and use this to put these on. If this works, I'll start off just by putting one on, and then I'll do the rest off camera. Okay, now this is suggesting I put this in 20 millimeters just to be on the safe side, because God knows if this is going to make a difference. Put this 20 millimeters. Let's try this. This does give me just enough room. If I need to, I can get to those screws. Okay, so that appears to have worked. So let me put the rest of the feet on. Okay, all the feet are installed. So what I'm going to do is flip this over. Feet are installed. It feels relatively secure. Okay. Now, the one thing I did check is you notice there's some holes down in here on these 460s, and I verified that all the 460s have the same holes. So first I thought maybe I was going to have to go back through and take it apart because I missed that the holes need to be on one side, but that does look like it looks like we're good to go there. So now what I'm going to do is clean up a little bit and then start on the next steps. We're going to put these two cross beams on, and they are the 460s. No, I'm sorry. They're the 530s. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the 530s and using the RM5 25 bolts. So let's find my sheet here giving me what screws what. Should just need 4 of these right now. Got 4. Using my dish and switch back over to my tripod. Now the way the directions had this oriented, it's like this. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn things to keep the orientation the same. That way, again, I can stare at these pictures, which, and as I mentioned, I'm not even sure they're accurate. I definitely don't want these too tight. Just going to put those on so they're held but not tight. Now I'll put this one on and then let me pause it and I'll put that on. Okay, so we have this all done. And again, as that note says, don't over tighten. So we're not going to. What I'm going to do is I think, so this is the stage we're at right now. So it looks like I'm putting on the slides. And I've already gotten, I already have linear rails for this printer, but I'm just going to go ahead and put this together stock because in my mind, I think I'm better off making sure everything works appropriately before I start any upgrades. So let me find these. I'll go ahead and find the wheels here, start getting that put together. I've gone up to found the wheels. It looks like I have concentric nut here, so I have these oriented appropriately. Now it looks like I need to go ahead and put them on the rails and then maybe again adjust that concentric nut. So let me go ahead and do that and then we'll take a look at what that looks like. Yeah, I've had another light over my workspace. Maybe you can see a little better. Now, the way I have this plate is these actually are marked. There's a little R here, so that's going to go on the right side. I'll have to reorient. I'm going to go ahead and reorient this so that way it all looks correct and I'm following the directions. Now, there's a couple other things to note here. I want to make sure that this is on the side of the extrusion that has the holes on it, and then also I have these countersink holes are facing up, so I want those countersink holes facing up as well. That should sit like this. Now, the plate actually feels pretty tight, so I'm not even going to have to adjust those concentric nuts. So let me get my screws together. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put these screws in. Now, these pieces here are pointing towards the inside. So that looks good. Again, make sure that the countersink hole is pointed up. And I'm not going to super tighten these right now because I'm still not sure whether. Okay, let me put the other side on and then we'll see what that step looks like. Okay, I've installed sides here. You'll notice these are traveling freely. The plates don't feel like they're moving. These knobs are pointed towards the inside. these plates are both labeled left and right, so I know I have it correct. Everything feels like it's going smoothly. So now what I need to do, our next steps, is there's some stuff I have to install here on the back, and then the crossbar with the head on it. So let's go ahead and move over to the next steps. I have this piece that needs to go on the back of the printer. I just want to point out that screws fell out, so I had to dig around in the box to find it. So this looks like it should be right here. I'm just going to try to hand tighten this. This looks like it needs to be on the back. It looks like there's a small breakout board in there. Okay, there's a small breakout board. I'll have to figure out how all this needs to be wired. Now it looks like this needs to be oriented like this, and it'll be clipped onto the back. So and that's attached to the print head, and this has the chain on it. So let me find the other piece. It looks like we have another piece right here. So let's find that. So here's my other part that needs to go on the back. Now, just as a note, I actually found this part in with the tools. Now it looks like probably some other piece here I need, but it is not crystal clear, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, I can tell what it is. That's the chain is connected to there. So in this picture. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm going to turn the printer around and install these. These actually have measurements. So for the heck of it, I'll measure things out. But let me turn the printer around to get started. Okay, I've moved everything over to my printer. Now the first thing it says, I need this box. It needs to be 100 millimeters on the side here. So what I'm going to do is just okay, so I have this back breakout board. So that's sitting better. Now it looked like I actually need to run the wires up and over if I'm interpreting this correctly. Now in the directions, it has all the wires disconnected, but just don't see how I'm supposed to connect them back up once it's installed. So I've run this wire for the print head up and over. And then it looks like I need to install this next piece 40 millimeters over from here. So I've done 100 millimeters from the corner to here. And now we're going to do 40. So that's going to be 4 centimeters. Now this, I think the drag chain's actually secured to this. Yes, it is. Okay. So what I'm going to do is turn this a little bit and get to this from the side. It looks like this I need to pull these screws out. This actually needs to be put in. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and install. Okay. So the printer, this looks like it's going to go like this, and the drives, and it's going to be like this. Stretch this back so it's not totally down. Now, I'm just going to leave that like that for a minute until I find some screws and figure out which ones I need to do. Need 4 M412s. So let's go ahead and go to the tripod. Now, from the look of the directions, I'm going to actually go, this cross piece is going to go, the screws are going to go down this way. So let's go ahead, try this. So I want to make sure, I guess I need to point out the holes need to be up. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 of the 4 screws in just to hold it in place. And then I'll do the rest off camera. Okay. And the way I have this oriented, I have the right side pointed out towards me. Left is on this side, so that way when I reorient it, everything looks like it's correct. So let me go ahead and while I'm here, I'm going to take out these screws. Let's see if I can do this in a timely manner. And that's taking strain off this chain, which looks like it needs to be secured on both sides. If I remember this correctly, it should somehow snap in there, but not seeing how to do it without messing up the cords. For right now, I'll leave it. Let me go ahead and secure. Now, I went ahead and secured the chain to the piece on the hot end. Right now, I only have one screw in. It's really it's hard to get at that other screw, but let me try. Problem is all these wires, and I don't want to really pull. I guess I shouldn't be afraid to, because I'm thinking about, I'm going to wind up taking the printer apart anyway. Yeah, now, directions. Everything feels like it's moving. It's like it's going to get hung, but what's this? The belt's on, it won't. This feels, motion feels good. So let's go ahead and we'll move to the next section of our directions. So right now, I finished all the way up to step 3, and it looks like I'm going over. Now step 4, I'm putting on the plates for the belts. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and look through all the parts, make sure I can find it. Also, see if I can figure out what side things need to be on. So let me pause and look for the parts. Okay, so it looks like I have Y, X, left and right. These pieces are labeled right in the middle, so they're etched. So here's the X axis stepper motor, X, Y, and then left and right. And these will be in the front of the printer. So these pulleys are going to be in the front. Y should be back left, looks like. X should be back right. So let me orient my printer. The front is facing me, and we'll start getting this together. Go ahead before I get a printer and loosen these T-nuts. Loosen this one too much. Loosen these T-nuts. So now I'll go over to the printer. Yes, these are labeled left and right. Printer's facing me. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in the right, drop in the left. Now I've gone through and tightened all the screws. So everything right now is tight. Now, in reading reviews, the tightening and tensioning of these belts is what gets people. And so I've gone ahead and bookmarked a couple of models that are belt tensioners for this printer. And I'll wind up installing those, but I'm just, again, going stock right now. So I have these tight, and again, left and right. So that's good. It feels good. So now we want Y on the left side, X on the right side. So let's pause, and what I'm going to do is turn the printer around. I have the printer facing backwards, so Y, as I mentioned, needs to be on the left side. So I'm lining these corners up here. This will be secured by T-bolts. To be honest, it doesn't feel too secure, but there we go. And let me go ahead and I'll stay on camera and do X as well. So X is on the right side. Again, the printer's facing backwards right now. Everything feels secure and motion feels all right. So what I'm going to do is turn the printer back around. Well, let me hold off. Let me look at the instructions first. So my next step here is I'm putting together the pieces for the build plate. So I need For each side, two silvers and one gold. So we have that. So let me go find the pieces. Yeah, so here are the support pieces now. I need to find 12 for each side, 12 M312s. So let me pull out my measurement sheet here. There's M312s right there. Here's my dish. Again, going through a pile of screws really stinks. And I mean, I'm really thinking I need 4 or 5 more bowls here to fit everything in. There's 4. So let me keep digging here. This is going to take me a couple minutes. Yeah, I found all my screws. Now what I need to do is these holes look like they need to be on the outside. Now again, depending on how I ran them, holes be on the outside, but I'm just pointing that out. So the holes in a further step need to be towards the outside. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to start with this gold piece here, and all the screws are being screwed from the top down. So I ahead and do that. Okay, so I have both these pieces together. I'll be honest, that took me like 30 minutes to do off camera. Bunch of tiny little screws. So we have that. So let me go through and see if I can figure out what my next step should be. Looks like I'm going to need to thread. It looks like I'm threading the rods. And I guess first for parts I need, it looks like 8 M420s, pulling those out. Those look like they're going to go in the ends of the straight rods here at the top and the bottom. So it looks like it's telling me I need some spacers. So let me go through my parts list here and see if I can find that. According to the directions, I need 4 M4 spacers. Of course, I can't find those. So I have 4 M4 washers. We'll assume that's the same thing, whether it is or not. And with my 800 little baggies that aren't labeled, I'm just going to go with these. So what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and try to install Z-steppers on the bottom here. I think that's what needs to be done next. Again, the holes on these things need to be towards the outside. So let me go ahead and install Z-steppers, see what that does. Now there's no measurements here, so hopefully I'll line them up with the holes. So let me go ahead and get that situated. The Z-steppers do line up with holes in the bottom, so you want to make sure the big holes on the outside line up. I want the connections towards the back. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Now, let's go ahead and start moving things around. First, I'm going to unwrap this taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and put the bed mounts on, and the look of it. Got some grub screws here. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how the heck I need to hold these damn things to get everything together. Okay. Well, this sort of looks correct, sort of, but okay, I see how to do this. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to go 2 washers here on the bottom. Two washers there. Okay. And I'm going to take 2 washers and do the other side. Sorry for readjusting on the fly here. Now, this is really hard to put together like this. What I'm trying to do is get these washers in between that rod and the extrusion. Okay, I'm working to get these sides, I'm working to get these rods installed on the side. I can't find these M4 spacers. I've tried using some of the washers I have with M5 washers and M4 washers, and unfortunately, they basically keep falling down into the channel on the extrusions, on the 2020 extrusions. So what I've done is I ran to Lowe's and I got these bigger washers, Bender washers. I'm going to try those because looking at these pictures, the washers don't need to be down in the channels. It actually needs to be, these need to be sitting on the channel. These are too thick, so I'm going to try one on each side and see if that works. This really isn't what I wanted to do. I just wanted to go with the parts I had, but this cost me $2. So I'll go ahead and try these, see if this will work. Okay, so I'm going to try with these new washers. Now these won't best them slip down channel, so that's good. This getting these sides on has turned out to be a big pain in the ass. I'm thinking this is probably almost a 2-person job. Now that actually looks like it might work. Try on this side. That actually looked like it worked. So what I'm going to do is move things around and then work on the other side, and I'll show you the results. I almost have the rods completed on one side. What I've done is taken this piece and gone ahead and put it in the T-nuts. So they're in here. So I'm going to slip this through here. This piece needs to slip right up here. And so go ahead, tighten this, have that, and this actually feels like it's on pretty decent. Now what I'm going to do is seat this, tighten this up. This doesn't feel perfect. Loosen this up and mess with it a little bit more. So that feels all right. So one side is now complete, and then let me do the other side off camera. Yeah, I finally have the sides on. I got to tell you, that's probably one of the worst steps so far, and that's only step 6. So I'm just want to point that out to everybody. Let me switch over and we'll look at the instructions. It looks like our next step is installing the control box. So in the screen, and what I'm confused about is it looks like down here, they're doing the screen by itself, but up here, it looks like they're attaching the screen first. So let me go ahead and pull the parts off and take a look at things. Well, this is actually interesting the way they have this. So they have the screen attached to the control box. And what I'm supposed to do is detach the screen here. So I'm detaching it and then attaching the screen to the frame. So that's neat. That's neat. Okay, so let me take the screen off and then we'll see how this needs to be mounted. Yeah, so I flipped the printer on its side. This is the back, bottom. It looks like I need to install the control box in the back corner, if I'm interpreting this right. So I'm going to set the screen down here since it's already attached. And looking at this, control box should be set this up here. Feeling. Make sure all these wires here. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this a little bit. So now I can push this in. Feels like turn it a little bit more. And I'll move my camera over here just a bit more. I'm going to try this bottom screw first, see if it can stick. There we go. Now this feels really awkward the way this is in here. It feels tight. I'm pretty sure when I do the VZ bot upgrades, I'm going to wind up changing that whole control box. So now what I'm going to do is put this right side up. It's going to go down right here. So let me get the screws out and we'll go ahead and do that. Now it looks like, according to the directions, there should be 4 T-screws down here holding display on. I'm only going to go 2 because eventually, like I said, I think I'm going to tear all that out. Anyway, so let's switch over and look at the directions. I'm going to point out another mistake here in the manual. If I'm reading this correctly, right here it says KM3 30 screws. I need 6 of them. Looking at my measurements, I only have KM3 35s. Now these screws here seem to match that. Assume we need. But again, it's just one of these things that feel like they should. The direction should at least have the bags aren't labeled for the screws, and then in the directions here, they don't necessarily match. So I'm going to put that aside. Now I need to find RM3 16s. Here's the RM3 16s. So I need 2 of those. And this beam, which will be 2 of those. And it looks like that's probably the bottom. Looks like that's going to bottom across here on the plate. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is let me start by pulling out the bed, and then I'm going to install these in the springs. So let me move stuff around, and I'm going to do that. I'll do that over at the bed as well. I mean, over at the printer. So let me pause. What I'm going to do is put my long screws back through here. Have the cord is going to be in the back, right-hand side. Now, once I push these long screws through, I need to tighten on a nut. Now, also in the bag came a ton of washers, but nowhere in the instructions to say where to put them. So I'm not going to bother right now. The fact that nothing here is labeled is really a nightmare. I didn't realize how bad that was going to be. I did see people complain about that online. And again, never did, I think. But surely it can't be that bad. Well, yeah, it is. So I have one screw in. I'm going to go ahead and put the other screws around, and then I'll show you what I do. Now I'm looking at the crossbars. They're both the same. Screws are meant to be, it looks like these are countersunk holes. So I'm going to put them like this, the countersunk holes going up. And let's go ahead and put this side on. So what I'm going to do, go ahead, hold this up, and I need to put the springs on. So I need 3 springs on each side. Springs on, and then turn this sideways, slip this bar in. I'm going to push it in a little bit so I can just get these. Now what I have done is I have one of the front crossbar on with the nuts to level the bed. So what I'm going to do is turn this on this upside down. I'm going to try to prop the cord up here. And although that's not going to, I know that's going to fall down. And what I'm going to do is let's tilt this a little bit. Those screws on, I mean the springs on. And then I want the countersunk holes going up. That's correct. So let's put these on. Yeah. So now I have both these on. I'm going to set this on top here. And I believe there's a piece I have to put back in here. So let me pause and look at the instructions. And I've got this drag chain secured right here. But I'm noticing this cord is pulled extremely tight. But as far as I can tell, based on the instructions, everything's correct. So I'm just going to roll with it for right now. Now, the other thing I noticed, you maybe can see it here, is it's rubbing up against the spring in the back. So you can see that the wire coming out. So I don't know how that's going to affect leveling. So now what I'm going to do is try to go ahead and level these two things. So I think that's sort of level. Now I need to secure in these screws here on the side. So let me read my instructions and figure out what screws I need to use for that. To secure that bed, I need M412s, and right now I of course can only find, I need 8, and I can only find 7. And looking at my spare screws, there's none in there. Which again is pretty dang aggravating. Why have extra screws if you don't have extra screws of everything? But I have an M4, it's a hex head socket cap, but I think that should be all right. I'll put that in the back. Don't have anything close up where I could see. Yeah, going to the next step, it looks like it should be underneath and the screws go down. Okay, so let's rearrange this. It's going to need to go in from the bottom. So I'm going to put the screws in here, hold that on. So what I'm going to do is put this right here and put the screws up through here. Or no, I'm sorry, the screws go down. So now this is turning into a 2-man job. So let me go get some help, and that way I can finish this. Okay, so I've gone ahead and secured this. And if I can do this right, it looks like everything's moving sort of cleanly. So that's good. So let's go ahead and move on. Now I'm not turning this around because now it's gotten really heavy. But what I'm going to do is I need to put this drag chain, I need to secure it. Loosen the T-nuts on. And I think they have an exact measurement how far I need to go up. But what I'm going to do, put that in the extrusion, and then just line these two up. Line up these two. So that completes that step. So the drag chain's all secure. and that should give me enough slack to come all the way to the top. Yeah, I'm looking at these instructions, and it looks like I need to tell me use zip ties to hold these belts on, which to me feels like it's going to be a nightmare. So what I'm going to do is switch over, and give me 1 second. I used these printed belt clips before. So what I'm going to do, and there's 4 models. There's one for thin belts, one for thick belts. That way I'm going to use those rather than the twist ties. And I'm going to go ahead and print 4 of each. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for the night. In this part, I've gotten everything done, and now I'm switching over to installing the belts. And so in the second part of this video, I'll go ahead and install the other accessories.